Here we go, another season of overindulging. I'm eating foods I don't want to eat at relatives' houses. My kids are being fed things that I wish were never invented. I'm losing my mind. 80/20 is out the window. Sugar plums are dancing on my hips. Is the overindulging worth it? How can I survive traveling? How can I survive going to somebody's house? And what am I supposed to serve when I'm hosting when nobody wants my liver and jello mold? Okay, how can you eat well and stay sane if you're hosting? What ancestral dishes can you prepare in advance of the bustling season? Are you going to spend your entire Christmas in the kitchen, or do you actually get to enjoy things but not have to totally compromise by buying a ton of pre-made food that's too expensive and honestly too overprocessed? Are you going to be suffering from overindulgence headaches, or are you going to be feeling at your peak optimum and best health for getting through a very exciting season? And the perennial question, what can you bring to a holiday that doesn't feel like a moral compromise, but that other people will actually eat? If you want to spend more of your holiday sitting around listening to the fire pop, enjoying good music, not feeling bad when you travel, and indulging in nutritious, nourishing foods, this is the episode for you. Allison and I have spent years cultivating the Christmases that serve us and the Christmas that feels the way we want it to feel by nourishing our body and soul and warming our heart and spirit. In this episode, we will share our favorite tips and our answers to these questions and the traditions we have created for our families to enjoy, how we shape our loves and our affections. And I think at the end of this episode, we will hear you exclaim ere you scroll out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast with Alison, a European town dweller in central Italy, and Andrea, living on a newly created family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA. Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancient ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Alison. How are you?
I'm good. It's cold here today and it's been raining really heavily all day. So it's dark and wintry and kind of just the right sort of weather. Well, actually, your weather's probably the right sort of weather for this episode, isn't it? Do you still have snow?
Not really, but it frosted so heavily last night that it looked like it snowed outside. So
Okay, so
it's
everything's
pretty
white.
cold. hmm
So that's perfect for our Christmas episode then.
Yes, it is. I'm
Indeed.
excited. I
Have you
love
had
this one now.
breakfast?
No, but I suppose I'm supposed to just tell you the last thing I ate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So last night we had a really nice light brothy soup, and I had a bunch of ground beef that I got out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mixed it with some salt, some pepper, some herby essential oils like sage and things like that. And then I just made a bunch of really thin patties and fried them super lightly.
Mm-hmm.
So then you make yourself a bowl of brothy soup, put a couple patties on top. It was so good. So
Nice.
that was my dinner and it was perfect.
I love the fact that you put oils in the food rather than the actual, herbs or dried herbs or fresh herbs. Does it
Yeah.
taste the same? Can you tell the difference?
I think it's better because it tastes like I really took the time to pound out all the oils and extract them and get them into it instead of
Yeah.
my dried sage after a while starts to lose its flavor. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Wonderful.
hmm
Okay.
What did you have?
Yeah, I had stew, perfect for this time of
Oh,
year.
nice. Yeah.
I made a really big pot at the weekend with oxtail. And last time I had to blend it because Gabriel wouldn't eat the, in quotes, blobby bits. But this time
Yeah.
I started it with the meat and just meat and water. And then I took, as it got kind of falling off the bone, I took the meat out and I chopped it up really, really small while it was still warm. So the blobby bits were really small. And then I put it back in the stock
Nice.
pot and then I added lots of cavolo nero, a beautiful squash. We haven't eaten squash for ages because we were, for a while, working with potential lectin sensitivities. But there was a gorgeous squash at the farmer's market last week. Really heavy, not much air in the middle, just solid kind of orangeness.
Man.
So that went in, and lots of leeks and some spices, and I think that's all. It was very, very nice. So I've been just putting
That
it, I
sounds
had put
good.
it in the fridge, and then I've been heating it up for
Mhm.
lunch this week. We had that with sourdough spelt bread and lard on the bread, some salt on the lard, and a bit of sauerkraut. Very,
Perfect.
very, very
Do
good.
you do you find that I find sometimes with, I don't know what you want to call it, weird ingredients, if I chop things really, really small, I can get away with a lot more.
I think it's true. I think it's true.
Yeah.
He's once in this week when he's been eating it, he said, "What's this?" and picked something out, and I said, "I'll just give that bit to Dad." He ate the rest. It was fine. I obviously
Yeah.
missed that bit. Didn't get it quite so small. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that chopping small can hide a lot of things. So
It
I
just
I
makes it
employ that.
more homogeneous, maybe,
Yeah.
easier to get it down because you're not just focusing on chewing this big chunk forever.
Yeah, completely. And
Yeah.
and I didn't want to blend it merely because I didn't want to blend up the squash. I've not had squash for
Yeah.
so long. I wanted to
Yeah.
see those chunks and taste those chunks of
hmm
squash. I didn't want them all blended up. So
I
it kind
love
of,
squash.
oh, indeed, it
I
was
love squash.
it was really beautiful,
Mm.
seeing Massey is the guy who grows the vegetables, some of them at the market
Uh-huh.
that we buy. And the squash was there whole, and I said to him, "How much does this cost?" And he weighed it, and it was really heavy. I felt how heavy it was, and I said, "Could we have half?" So he said yes, and he cut into it,
Nice.
and he looked at it, and he was so proud. He was like, "Whoa,
Oh,
look at that! I'm really proud. That's just absolutely
oh,
beautiful." And it felt really nice to bring that
that is
home
great.
and know how he felt about growing it. So,
Do you know what kind of squash it was? There's like and
so
thousands of
many.
varieties of
I know.
squash. There's so many.
It was an orange one. Does that help?
Not really.
No. It was
Doesn't narrow it
it
down
was
much, right?
round, not as big as a pumpkin,
Mm.
and it, instead of going up at the top like pumpkins do, it kind of went back in on itself, and it had a
Wow.
bluey kind of grey greeny skin. Not
Hmm.
particularly tough,
It
but not
reminds
to
me
be
of a
eaten.
turban squash, the way you describe it,
Maybe a bit like that.
but I don't know. That's amazing. Our neighbor, she grows a lot of winter squashes and things. I mean, she grows a lot of everything, but right now winter squash is the thing, and she's been bringing me boxes of it. Oh my goodness, including
Wow.
decorative squash, ones that
Yeah,
you would put
yeah.
on the table, and man, it's all so good. She gave us this big, long one called a candy squash.
Okay.
Oh my word, Allison.
Really
First
good.
of all, it makes like 5 dinners,
Mm,
but, it's so good. You can roast it, you can blend it. I made the last of the one that I was working my way through. I roasted it in the oven with just a little bit of butter and honey brushed on, and then I
mm,
blended it all. I was like, "I don't know, just see what happens."
mm.
And basically, me and Hannah couldn't stop eating it out
Yeah,
of the bowl with a spoon. It was so
yeah.
good.
That's kind of
Crazy.
it's supposed to be. I do that with butternut squash sometimes. I call it butternut squash soup, but it's just basically blended up butternut
Yeah.
squash,
Yeah.
and
Mhm,
it's very
mhm.
good, very good,
Yeah. Delicious.
lovely.
All
So
right. What's
today,
up?
before we move on to our topic, I want to welcome some new patrons. So we have 4 new patrons since the last time we did a roll call. So welcome Zara, Deb, Diana, who is our first annual patron, which is a new option that Patreon have allowed us to offer with a
Yay.
discount, and also Lauren. So a couple of them are already on the Discord because I've talked to them on there. Welcome to all of you. And if you're listening and you're thinking about becoming a patron, do head over to patreon.com/ancestral kitchen podcast to have a look and
Yeah.
see the goodies
That's
that we have.
awesome.
Thank you. I have a review as well to read. Every now and again,
I'm
I
excited.
remember to look and see if there are any reviews. And so I have one here from Kombucha Addict. And the title
Oh, I like
is
it.
Encouraging and Informative. I learned of this podcast from the Wise Traditions podcast. It has encouraged and inspired me to dig into ancestral eating more than I have been. I have owned the Nourishing Traditions book for years, but sadly have not completely followed its principles because it can be overwhelming. Thank you, Alison and Andrea, for simplifying it for me. Thank you, Kombucha Addict, for leaving us that review, which
Wow,
was 5 stars.
that is so kind.
That's
I
nice
love
to
it.
hear.
Thank you.
Indeed. So let's move on. And the title of this episode is Our Christmas Survival Guide. And it might sound a bit clickbaity, but basically, when I asked for questions for this episode from our patrons, most of them seemed to be help me survive Christmas. So I thought, well,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
basically what we're going to talk about. So, yeah, let's dive in and see if we can help people not only survive, but get the most out of
Mhm.
whatever circumstances they find themselves in this Christmas.
Yes,
Okay, shall I start?
I think you should.
Yeah, okay. So, the first topic that I wanted to talk about, which kind of comes from my old life coaching days, is I think it's really important to get clear on what's important to you over Christmas. And
Mhm.
having that knowledge, you can then frame what you're doing, frame your actions, frame what you say to people, frame what you're cooking, frame how you choose to spend your time around that. And that will leave you at the end, hopefully, more satisfied because you've got what you wanted. So I think for some people, Christmas is a rest. That certainly feels for me and Rob
Mhm.
that Christmas is a break for us, it's a rest. So, do
Mhm.
you want to rest? Do you want to cook? Do you want to explore and make new dishes? Do you want to have fun? Do you want to go and see friends, either far or near? Do you want to be with your family? Do you want to do the things that you're supposed to do, your duty to look after those around you? What is it that is important for you to get out of the festive and to give during the festive period? For me,
Yeah.
like I just alluded to, and for Rob, it's a rest. Gabriel's not at school. Our
Yes.
routine is different. We're not getting up at 6:30 every morning, and we don't. Rob doesn't have so much work to do. I try to take a break, and so it's about being together, spending time
Mhm.
together, really savouring that time and doing things that we wouldn't necessarily have time to do at other times, and to rest, relax, kind of take our foot off the pedal a bit.
Mhm.
How about for you,
Like what?
Andrea?
Well, you said do things that
Mm.
we don't usually have time to do. Like what?
Yeah, so like play board games. Well,
Oh,
we read all the
yes.
time, but we don't necessarily have time to play board games.
Mhm.
So usually board games come out at Christmas. Often I will sit around and I'll listen to Christmas services, which,
Mhm.
listening to the radio for an hour and a half, I don't usually do. Sit
Mhm.
around with my feet up, frankly, cook more kind of different food than I normally would do. So rather than just being on the treadmill of I've got to do lunches, make sure we've got this ready and this, I can say, oh, actually, I fancy cooking that. And I can do it joyfully because there's enough space and time around me
Yeah.
that I don't feel pressured. That kind of thing.
I love that. Your
Thank you.
Christmas has, ever since I met you, really touched and inspired me for our Christmas to make sure that I am also, because I find those are the things that I want too, Allison,
Hmm.
that I also want the, you know, the space, I guess,
Mm. Mm.
not just a chaotic continuation. So for us, Christmas is um is centered really around I want to celebrate the whole Advent season
Mm.
and take in all those Advent related activities that we love. So, reading specific Christmassy scriptures,
Hmm.
listening to Handel's Messiah, and if somebody listened to our last year's Christmas episode, I think I
Mm.
mentioned on there. Goodness, kitten is jumping up, trying to get on the table. Um, uh, Cindy's book, Handel's Messiah book,
Yeah, I remember.
and Hallelujah Celebration, I think it's called. And basically, the Messiah is split up into 25 or 24 parts or something. And so she's like, look, you can listen to a part every day. And so it's kind of a meditation to sit and listen to it. And you can read through the, what do you call it, Allison? The lyrics? The libretto? I don't know.
Libretto, yeah, I'd call it the libretto.
Libretto. Okay. All right. So you can read through that, which is itself basically that's scripture too.
Yeah.
So that's really, really meditative. Um, so we like to attend church services with our family and at our church also. And I really love the emphasis my parents always placed. And, we were a big family, lots of little kids, but I always felt like we got a constant exposure to the arts because they made an effort to take us whenever big churches and things would put on
Mm.
concerts. And, Allison,
Yeah.
those are quite professional. They're not always just amateur
Yeah.
performances, although I do enjoy amateur things as well. But so music, plays, concerts, recitals, those are really important for us in the Christmas season.
You made me think
Um,
about I've just started singing at the American church in Florence, and they have a service on Christmas Eve, which I'm
oh,
hoping to sing at. And I'm really thinking that it would be lovely if Rob and Gable would come into Florence so we could go look at the Christmas tree in front of the
oh
Duomo,
man, that would
see
be
it all
wonderful.
lit up, and then I'll go and sing in the choir. They can sit in the congregation.
Yeah,
And Gable sings Christmas carols all throughout the year. He sings
of
Jingle
course he
Bells
does.
and Hark the Herald Angels Sing in July. So he can sing some
I
carols,
don't doubt it.
hopefully. And it would just be a beautiful kind of start to the actual Christmas celebrations. It makes me think about that.
Yeah, I love that. And as a kid, those were very influential on me. I know because me and my siblings were always setting up little recitals and concerts and plays and dressing up and things like that and calling our parents upstairs and then putting on performances for them. So I know they had a big impact on us all. Allison, you reminded me that I have a very distinct memory of being quite small, um, probably less than 5,
Mm.
and sitting in the back of the car and singing Hark the Herald Angels singing. And I don't know what I was saying, but I remember my parents just like stifling their laughter so hard. So
Oh,
I wonder what words I was providing.
that's sweet. Gosh.
Anyways,
Carols are so important to me over Christmas because
yes,
I
me
mean, I
too.
know you've said that you sang in a church choir. I grew up singing in a church choir like 3 times a week for well over a decade, more like
Yes.
15 years. And, Christmas was so wonderful. We used to sing midnight mass and
Hmm.
be together with lots of kind of younger friends, really excited to be up at midnight for Christmas Day.
Yes.
And it feels like those carols hold me in a place that I
Yeah.
just love to be in, and so indulging in them and them taking me to that space over Christmas helps me remember those feelings that I want to
Hmm.
encourage and I want to have over the
Hmm.
Christmas period. They're like a
Yeah.
tool. Mm.
And if somebody's listening to this now and they haven't heard last year's Christmas episode, Allison, you talked about King's Choir last year,
Yeah, that's right.
and that is linked in our show notes for the last episode on
Mm.
Christmas from last year. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah,
So of
definitely.
course like you said, I love to read winter themed poetry, stories and fairy tales to the kids. There's a lot of those out there. Um, anything Russian.
Hmm.
Watch a few Christmas themed movies. We usually don't do very many, but we'll usually do like 3.
Hmm.
Um, and then I like to bake and cook special
Mm.
Christmas treats with the kids, which they expect. So um, I know what the tradition is because they say, "Aren't we gonna? Don't we always?" I'm like, "Oh, well, we did that last year. I guess we always do it now."
Yeah.
So we like to make a gingerbread house every year,
Hmm.
and they like to make ginger cookies, and then they make Christmas cookies to leave out for Santa. And of course, Santa drinks raw milk. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So leave out good raw milk. um, and they like to make cookies that you can roll out and then cut with shapes.
Hmm.
Those are really fun. And then, of course, a roasted turkey.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel
Delicious.
like there's something that floated through my head there, but I forgot it. But
I
I
think
think a
it.
lot of us are
Mhm.
adding your gingerbread as a tradition this year.
Well, that I have got so many doughs on the go for the fermented gingerbread. I don't quite know how. I think I have to give the cookies to more people than I gave the cookies to last year because I mixed another one today. I mixed up a oat dough, which is literally just rolled oats that I blasted until they turned into flour. And I've mixed those with
Wow.
honey. So I've got two rye ones, two
Ooh.
spout ones, and one oat one on the go now. So that's, I think we must be getting into the hundreds of cookies kind of area.
Nice.
And I don't really eat that many of them at all. But Gabriel will take some into school and we can give people them, and then that will be really nice. I think that when I listen to you talk about all those things, it just makes me think of the word joyful. And I feel like joy
Hmm.
is something that is very, very important to both of us and to the festive season. And using our space that we are living in and making that joyful feels like a really important thing to me. And I remember last year seeing your Instagram pictures of the beautiful decorations that you've made out
Oh
of
yeah.
literally what's outside your back door. And I wanted you to talk to us about those for a little while and how that's part of your Christmas and what you do.
Yes, 'cause I'm starting my plans for that now. Actually, I guess I should say as I'm recording this, I'm starting my plans for that now. But
Hmm.
if you're listening to this, then probably already have pictures up on my Instagram you
Yeah,
can go
yeah,
see.
go look.
Uh-huh. So before somebody says, but of course you live in the forest, I started this when we lived in town, and I am a big fan of, well, Allison, I think that we talked about this on the last Christmas episode. I'm trying to remember so I don't repeat myself. But
Mm,
if you just try to do things within the budget you have, which for me is was has typically always been none.
mm, mm.
There's no budget for decorations necessarily, or if
Yep.
there is, we spend it on lights for hanging, like on the
Yeah,
eaves or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But I like making the inside of the house look pretty, and so I just thought, well, I guess I'll just have to get creative with what I have around me. And of course, drawing on inspiration from medieval greening and colonial sort of decorations, which are all, they didn't have Hobby Lobby or um, things like that. And decorations are a lot like when we talk about food. Oh, there's a cat up here. Let's see if she's going to hit the microphone. Hello. Hello, Athena. She's like, wants to check it out.
Mm.
Um, a lot of the things you see in the store are just imitating sort of the free, cheap, available ancestral things of before. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, Allison,
yeah,
have you seen, sort of aged looking dishes
yeah,
or old looking trays,
yeah.
or fake branches and things like that? Um, oh, here's another cat. Oh my goodness. Hello, Paula. So, um, I like to forage, find, ask neighbors who are trimming hedges, cutting branches down if I can have them, watch after windstorms for things that come down, and just pile it all on the table and just try to think, okay, how can I make this come together? So
Mm,
mobiles are really fun, I think, because you can do part of the reason why I started doing those was because I could only find tiny bits of things. And with tiny bits of things, you can
yeah,
do mobiles. Um, I know you've done those, Allison,
yeah.
and just like a big branch or even a curtain rod if you can't find a branch, and then just using string, I would tie on popcorn or cranberries or little branches. Now we have feathers from birds that we could tie on, and you could hang ornaments from it. Just trying to be creative with what I have. Of course, dried oranges and things
Yep.
like that from the summertime if I had those. And I actually reserved a bag specifically for it, so I've got some ready to go
Oh,
for my
wonderful.
mobile.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and then over the last couple of years, I've slowly started to accumulate some wooden beads here and there. So now I'm thinking I'm going to use some
Hmm.
wooden beads to hang, make some pretty things. But you can see, Allison, that's one of those things where year over year, I can build up my collection and my skill and make it look more and more beautiful. But in the beginning, I just feel lucky if I have a tree up, and then later I feel lucky if I have a tree and a mobile, and
Mm.
you know.
I
And
think
as the kids get bigger, it gets easier too.
that's been the same here. I haven't kept all of my decorations from year to year, but I've kept some.
No, neither have
And
we.
the some that I keep, then
Mhm.
you kind of build in it, like pine cones. I've kept pine cones.
Yes, really
And
good
then
ones.
as
Yeah.
it goes on, I've had more and more pine cones, and I decorate them with paint that I make
Oh,
from
that's nice.
casein and mica, which is sparkly. And so that kind of thing. And the oranges
Uh
are
huh.
around here now because they're a winter. They're really available in winter citrus. So
Hmm.
we've got those and use those a lot. But I mean, the stuff you've done with the branches and that I've seen is just absolutely beautiful. Do you
Yeah.
use something to make them stay together, or do you kind of twist them round themselves?
Mm. So Hannah is really, I don't know how she learned how to do this, but she can make wreaths. Like she made wreaths 2 years ago, over two
Hmm.
years ago when she was out here the first time. And so she would find all these, whippy sort of branches
Mm.
and basically weave and braid them together into a really tight ring, quite large. And then she made small ones
I see.
too,
Yeah.
with basically with twigs. I don't know how she did it. And then then she would decorate that. She would start to tie on branches and citruses and things like that. And then what we did at the end of the year was we just took all the branches and citruses off and then put the branches away,
Ah, clever.
the woven piece away. So we'll have that for next year. I don't myself know how to do that. So I don't do that. I just like when I made the big mobile with all the branches on it, it looks quite, you know, big and clustered and everything, but I only had tiny twigs of pine. So I had to tie them all on with thread because I didn't have any big
Yeah,
ones at all at that
I
time.
see. Yeah.
Um so yeah. And then dead sticks and ferns and
Mm.
things like that look really nice in mason jars, and you can make quite tall centerpieces or corner pieces. And if you really want,
Well,
if you
actually put
have,
them in the
you
mason
put
jar, you're
lights
saying?
and yeah,
Oh, I've
like
never
really big
tried that.
branches.
Okay.
Yeah, they look really nice, especially if you have tall mason jars, and I have a lot of tall old ones.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's surprising what you can do with dead stuff.
So there's one more thing that I wanted to add on here, which I think I didn't talk about last year, which is
Hmm.
we have a kind of a homemade, in quotes, Christmas tree, which is
Yes, I love
something
it.
which I spent a year making, really. It's embroidery hoops, like just one of the embroidery hoops. They usually come in two embroidery hoops, but just like a wooden ring, a
Mhm.
light wooden ring. And I've got three different sizes. In total, there's about 30 of them. And I painted them in green. And then I arranged them in the shape of a tree, like a big triangle, and tied them together with some jute string. And then every year we make, like the centre of each circle, we make a kind of a cardboard bauble, as it were, to hang in the circle. So usually I just use packaging boxes that have been delivered to the house, cut the circles out, and then Gabriel draws some
Yep.
things, or we've collected things from outside and made them into, tied them up with string and hung them from inside the circles. And then it goes on the wall for about 2 weeks before Christmas and maybe 10 days afterwards. And it's wonderful because it's out of the way. Our house is very small. So it's on the wall, it's out of the way, but every year it's different. And I know I painted every single one of those circles and tied them together. And,
Hmm.
we've either collected the stuff to go in there like you have, or we've drawn them and we've used all upcycled stuff. There's nothing plastic, there's nothing new.
Love
It's
it.
all old stuff, and it just that's our Christmas tree now. And I can't. Maybe in the future we'll have a Christmas tree, but I can't imagine anything different at the moment. It's something that really brings that joy into our space here. Maybe I'll try and find a picture of it and put it somewhere where
No,
people
you
can
should,
see it.
because I've seen pictures of it before and I love it. It's so beautiful.
It's on
And
my
it's so inspirational for small spaces.
There's some pictures on my art Instagram which is Alice and Faith K. I think they're up there. Maybe I'll try and put them somewhere else. But it's yeah, just think outside the box. You know, I've seen people with Christmas trees made of twigs. I've seen people with Christmas trees made of
Hmm. Hmm.
driftwood, made of, you know, loads of different things. And it's a chance to use time creatively to build something that will bring you
Right.
joy. Really, really nice.
You know what we're burning in our stove right now?
Mm,
Gary's parents. I told you that Gary and his dad were cutting down trees on his parents' property. They cut down 13 trees,
mm,
and they were all Christmas trees that somebody had planted there
mm,
before they ever moved out there that were already too big when they moved out there,
mm.
And I've learned since moving out here that that's something that a lot of people do who live on a big piece of property is they'll plant a few Christmas trees and then every year they'll plant one or two more.
Oh,
So
I
then as the
see.
years go by, they keep unrolling back. They have a new tree ready every
Clever.
year. Yeah, isn't that pretty brilliant?
Mm.
And then if somebody just doesn't take them for a while, they just kind of grow and become a tree somewhere.
Yeah.
And then now they're fueling our fire for the winter.
Do you smell the fact that they're Christmas trees? Do you smell the pine?
Oh, I mean, when you're picking up the logs, for sure, very resinous.
Yeah, yeah, really
Yeah,
beautiful. Okay, let's talk about food because why not? We always talk about food, don't we?
do
And I think
let's.
there's a lot, you know, food and Christmas just are synonymous, but also there can be a
Oh,
lot of
yes.
stress and worry about food over Christmas. And I
Yeah.
think that was part of our thinking of creating a Christmas survival guide. So there's kind of two situations that we might be in over Christmas with food. Either we're hosting and we've got people coming to us, or we're going somewhere else. And we wanted to address those two kind of separately. So, first of all,
Yeah.
if you are hosting, we came up with, well, we've got lots of ideas for how you can best deal with that. My idea really is just do as much as you can before the day. You know, you don't want your Christmas
Absolutely.
day to be stressful. You don't want to be over a stove sweating, you know, not being able to dress in the way that you want to, worrying about things boiling
Yes.
over or not being able to time things properly. You want to be with whomever you're spending that time with. So
Hmm.
cook as much as you can in advance and don't be too adventurous with what you're doing. And then ask people for help. I mean, we say that over and over again in plenty of our episodes. Take the people in your household and get them doing stuff. You know, get someone peeling, get someone chopping, get someone stirring. I think that those are really important. Remember, you can eat cold food, it doesn't all have to be hot. Um, so you can prepare stuff, you know, literally a couple of days before. As we know, if you're making a dish that has lots of different flavours like spices in it, sometimes those taste better after a couple of days in the
I
fridge
agree.
anyway, because
Yeah.
those flavours actually, you know, get to sit with each other.
Hmm.
So those I think are my 2 cents on that. Andrea, what would you say if you're hosting Christmas are your tips?
I agree. First of all, when people say, "Can I bring something?" Just say yes.
Please.
And if they need guidance, give them something that say, "Oh, could you bring fruit?"
Mm,
There's things people can bring that is easy for them to bring, and you don't have to wonder really how it will be. But I agree with making things in advance if possible. Do you want me to read the list real quick of
Yeah,
cold
you have an
things?
amazing list of things that
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, if I needed to think about what I could make, I'd want to hear this list. So please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So not all of this necessarily has to be served cold, but it's all things you can do ahead. And my mom, efficiency expert with 8 kids, is always a fan of doing things ahead as much as possible. So make mayonnaise because there's so many salads and spreads and sauces and dips and things that you make around Christmas time that need mayo. And when you make it with whey, it'll last longer in your fridge. So make your mayo, other things you can make ahead a couple days or more: potato salad, deviled eggs, macaroni or any pasta salad, coleslaw, which is one of my favorites, beet slaw.
Mm.
Obviously, all of those, I put kraut juice in everything, so they will all
Yeah.
be probiotic and they'll sit well in the fridge.
Mm.
Gelatin dishes, and you can get really elaborate with doing layers, different juices, or making cream layers for those, of course. Um, Gingerbread sits
Mm,
very well. Some baked goods you can do a day or two ahead, but if you're wanting to do things like dinner rolls and things like that, I do prefer my baked things fresh. So I would make a big batch of dough and keep that
mm,
in the fridge because then
yeah.
you can just pull out maybe if you're doing some rolls for um, Christmas Eve and then breadsticks on Christmas Day, even you can use the same dough for that. Soups you can almost always make ahead and then reheat them, and blended soups the same. Pumpkin or squash pie
Mm,
and lard pie crust. My mom, every year, she makes a lot of pie crusts raw dough, and then she just balls them up and puts them in the freezer. And then as the holidays unroll, she unrolls
mm,
the dough,
mm.
and that really does speed things up. Cranberry sauce, I agree, Allison. This is one of those things, like you said, the longer it sits, the better.
Yeah.
So make that early, make it well. And of course, you could do a fermented chutney, cranberry chutney, something like that as well. Oh, Lexi just sent me her favorite cranberry chutney, fermented chutney the other day, actually.
Hmm.
I'll link that in the show notes.
Hmm.
Cooked cold turkey, ham or chicken or beef.
Yeah.
You can use cold meat for about 1 billion different
Yeah,
things.
completely.
Homemade hot cocoa. Um, just sometimes when you're making things from scratch, there's just a few more steps than if you're opening packets and things like that, or if you're doing Sally Fallon's raw milk warmer or something. Just make a big batch of it and then pour it into half-gallon jars or milk jars and store it in the fridge. And then when you have people over, or it's, a tradition for us is on Christmas Eve having hot chocolate with cookies, then you can just take it out of the fridge and heat it in a pan. Of course, whipped cream. I like to make that and put it in containers because then, if you're doing hot cocoa Christmas Eve at night, you don't want to be mixing stuff. Homemade eggnog. We go through gallons and gallons of that every
Mm,
year. And fudge, there's a lot of different varieties you can make, including some that are even paleo. I think they would maybe be GAPS approved. I'd have to go and look now.
mm.
Like banana fudges and things that you can make and store in the freezer. And then also gravy. Gravy is one of those things that you can make gallons of it at a time, um, and just have it done, you know, whenever you whenever you want to
Yeah.
serve dinner.
Sounds wonderful. Really. I think
Now I'm hungry.
yeah, I think we're putting together a kind of Christmas hamper for the Patreons. And I
Mhm.
think hopefully we'll put that. I want you to put that list in there along with all the
I
other
will. I
goodies that
will.
we're going to put in there so
Yeah.
they can actually see that and think about it. I wanted to, I think this is a good moment to read out the advice that Ellie passed on to me, Ellie from
Yes.
Ellie's Everyday,
Yes.
because she's doing Christmas in Australia. So, of course, for you and me, it's cold here now. But for
Hmm.
her, it's warm at Christmas. And she's so down to earth and practical that I thought she would have some wisdom to pass on. And I just want to read what she said to me. So she says, my best advice for surviving Christmas is to follow your instinct and do what feels good and right for you and your family, even if that breaks all the rules. Keep it small and simple, make it lavish, do it how you want to do it. Find your joy and go with that. Taking the pressure off and giving permission to take it a bit easier is important. I think it's about the special time, being with the loved ones, celebrating the year, reflecting, relaxing. That's the most important thing. As long as you have something yummy and fun to eat, doesn't have to be fancy, and everyone's happy, and that's all that matters. So I love that because I
I
feel
love
like
it.
you've got permission to do something amazing if that's what you want to do. And every we have a tradition in our house
Right. Right.
where every Christmas I make something that I've never made before, and that's what we eat. We've done that now for at least 5 years, if not more. And that's what kind of jives with me. That's what I like, and that's what our situations allowed me to do so far. But if you're someone who wants to do something completely simple and just eat something that you've eaten all the time before and not follow the traditions, then like she
Hmm.
says, and like we said at the top of the episode, it's about going with your joy. That's the most important
Yeah.
thing.
I
Cool.
think that's important, Allison, because just as I'm listening to Ellie say that, I was thinking about just my own experience of Christmas throughout the years. And I've told you before how my mom is just so magical at traditions and
Yeah.
things like that. And somebody might hear that and say, well, I can't keep up with the traditions every year. Well, she had a new baby every other year,
Gosh.
every other year of my childhood, there was a new baby. So it wasn't like she just had unlimited time. And
Mm.
she very easily dropped, adapted, and picked up, but she kept her core of the things that were important. Like Ellie said, as long as you have something yummy.
Yeah.
But I've told you before, it was often not elaborate. I mean, I remember most of the time our Christmas dinners were, I think I told you they were buffet style, crackers and cheese, macaroni salad, things you could pick up and eat, deviled eggs, very, very simple.
Yeah.
And then other years, as us girls were growing older, we said, we want to roast a turkey, and we knew how to do it. We want to make cinnamon rolls from scratch.
Yeah.
But my mom it was not beneath her to buy cinnamon rolls from the store if that was what she needed to do. And then
Yeah.
in other years, I was making, sourdough homemade cinnamon rolls. And, but it evolved. But all I remember is how happy they all were.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Your mum is amazing.
I know, I know she is.
Okay, let's talk about the people who are going somewhere else for Christmas. So
Oh,
either
yes.
they're going to, and potentially somewhere that, doesn't eat ancestrally, maybe eats kind of
Mhm.
mainstream, sad American diet, standard American
Sad
diet, sad
American.
American diet. Um, what
You
would
said it
be
right the
your
first
what
time.
would be your advice to someone who's going somewhere else? And we had a question from Zara, who's one of the patrons, saying
Mhm.
she couldn't even take food to someone else's house because she's flying in, so she can't take food on
Yeah.
the plane. So talk about kind of going somewhere else and try to cover, if you can, because I know you can, about flying
Mhm.
in somewhere for us.
Okay, that has happened to me where I'm flying somewhere and I can't, you know, pack it in my suitcase, right? So what I've done is I've done two different things. One, I've booked in a stop at Whole Foods on my way to where I'm going. I don't shop at Whole Foods when I'm at home, but I do when I'm abroad, if you will.
Mm.
And the other thing I've done is I've actually booked this days in advance, is I've booked a Whole Foods delivery to the place where
Ah,
I'm going to go stay.
mm,
So also a lot of the things that I need, if you will, can sit for a few days. So I always buy sauerkraut if I'm going somewhere, different ferments, kimchi or things like that.
mhm.
Then eggs, good bread, and butter. At least I have right there a version
Yeah.
of a meal. Um, I don't I don't get too over the top if somebody's serving a turkey that they bought at the store. I'm just going to
Mm.
eat it. And then I know I've kind of got the basics there. And it isn't a perfect solution, but if you're going to cafes or things like that, and just look for paleo or keto as options, that often will help you avoid some of the big bad ones. It is not perfect,
Mm.
but it'll get you, like, the eggs are probably cooked in seed oils, but it'll get you closer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done before. And usually, if you go somewhere, people are really kind and accommodating of your food sensitivities. Number one, if you phrase it as a food sensitivity,
Mm.
and if they don't just think you are being a picky eater that is looking down your nose at them.
Mm.
And two, if you're not a jerk about it, like, oh, gross, I cannot eat your
Yeah.
disgust. Is that a GMO turkey? Keep it away from me. Don't be a jerk about it. And three, if you just make a good faith effort to handle your own needs. Hey, I know I have such weird food sensitivities, but I did bring this and I was wondering if I could make the dessert for tonight,
Yeah.
Um, so show
Yeah.
that
I think that you
you're not
couldn't have said that better.
rude.
It's some of it is just diplomacy and remembering you're in someone else's space. But then a lot of it
Totally.
is you can bring things in, even like you said, if you're flying, but also you can choose what to eat. I think it's important to remember that it's only one
Right.
meal. So, like
Mhm.
you said, if you're having turkey bought from a supermarket, then I just eat it because it's only one
Yeah.
meal. And I don't do that for the other
Yeah.
364 days of my year. But also, I think, I've been at Christmas at other people's houses and I've been able to kind of pick and choose what I can eat. It means that I'm
Absolutely.
not like stuffed and rolling around on the sofa after Christmas dinner, but who wants to be, frankly? And so I can choose,
No.
a bit of the meat and then some of the vegetables, but maybe stay away from some of the other things that are on the table that I wouldn't like. And if there's a few different desserts, including fruit salad, then I would, and Gable's at the table, maybe I would give him a small piece of one of the desserts, and I'd say he could have, a big bowl of fruit salad. You can choose what you want to eat from,
Mhm.
a spread on a table, and not feel like you have to just eat everything because someone's
Absolutely.
put it there or because it's Christmas. Um,
Yeah.
I know that's often hard depending on who the person is, but it goes back to what we said at the beginning about, your values and staying true to those. And if you don't want to feel like rubbish after Christmas Day because you've been at someone else's house, then
Mhm.
trying to navigate that consciously is possible in most cases. That's what
Yes.
I've found in my
And
life.
be again, what like you said, diplomacy, be complimentary about the things you are eating that you do get to enjoy. If I see somebody coming to my house and picking through 12 things I put out and only eating 3 of them, and they come and tell me how
Mm.
much they enjoyed those 3,
Yeah.
as a hostess, does it matter to me which things they enjoyed? As
Oh,
long as they enjoyed something, I don't really care.
yeah. Yeah, I
And I
agree.
agree with you, Allison. It is just one meal. And that when you asked to where to bend a little bit, um,
Mm.
is that a separate question or is that wrapped in this question? I can't remember.
No, I think that could be wrapped, Christmas
Okay.
themed. It could be wrapped inside this question.
Right. Okay. Christmas themed, wrapped up. All right. Let me just unwrap this a little bit. Was that if like it is just one meal, but if we do that every night through all of December, it starts to
Yeah.
add up and accumulate, right? And then there comes a meltdown. The kids had die or something, everybody's falling apart. So
Mm.
with kids, since you and I both have youngins to bring about,
Mm.
then I try to make sure
Mm.
they're very invested in and participating in the decisions, how the
Yeah.
things will make them feel. And some of them at certain ages are more aware of that than others. And if you're bringing food to an event that you aren't hosting, I there are things you can bring that are really high quality but aren't just ridiculously expensive. So
Mm.
deviled eggs with kraut juice is one I like to bring, or make the stuffing with your homemade bread. That's really economical.
Mm.
And of course, lacto fermented coleslaw and beet slaw. Those always get snapped up and they're easy to make and not super expensive, even with really premium ingredients.
And they don't necessarily
And
seem like weird food.
mm-mm, no, no, they're very familiar.
Yeah,
Very familiar. My
completely.
coleslaws always disappear and they're just mayo, shredded cabbage and or beets and or onions and or carrots depending on what I have. I've done just cabbage before. Rice, wine, vinegar, and kraut juice.
Yeah,
That's it.
sounds delicious.
Everybody else goes bonkers for it.
Let's dive
Um,
into the children a little bit more because
let's
that
do.
is kind of an area that I have felt stressed about in the past.
Yeah,
And I've
yeah.
had to, each Christmas with Gabriel, I've learnt what works, and I've watched him react, and I've watched me react and Rob react. And I think it's whenever Gabriel's with me around Christmas, the food he eats in this house, I'm giving him really good food. So most of the time when he's with
Yes.
me over at the Christmas period, he's getting good food. I also do make treats, like I'll make the fermented gingerbread and I'll give it to him
Mhm.
to take into school. So he's getting to eat gingerbread made with, local spelt flour and unpasteurized honey with maybe some of my 100% cacao chocolate on the top. And he often makes that with me. And I think it's just like, with anyone, the more you get involved in your food, the more you value it and appreciate it and don't kind of see it as, um, the only word I'm thinking of is crack, just like a thing to overeat on and use as something to abuse
Yeah.
yourself. And I think
Entertainment.
kids learn the same, if you're doing that and you're getting involved, and you're valuing your food, and you pull them into the recipes and get them enthused and involved, then they're going to value their food because you're giving that off
Mhm.
and you're giving them the chance to learn that too. And so I'll get Gabriel involved in the fermented gingerbread and other things that I make over Christmas, and I'll give him them to take out. And I know that, when he goes to someone else's house, there's going to be lots of other really not very nice treats, not as nice as the fermented gingerbread. And, maybe he'll
Mhm.
have some of them. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll eat the fermented gingerbread as well. But he knows what's involved in it. And like you said earlier, I've talked to him about it. I've talked to him about the food. I've talked to him about what to expect. I've talked to him, and he
Right.
knows how we live every day. And then I feel like I just have to let it go because I've done as much as I
Mhm.
can, and I've
Yeah.
each Christmas that goes along, I learn a bit. And I learn that there's no point because once he's out of the house with someone else, I can fall back on what I've given him, in our house up till that
Right.
point through all of our food adventures. But then it's up to him. And you know what? Like I said before, it's not the whole of the year. It's not all the time. And
Mhm.
so I have to learn to let go.
And I think the thing
So,
that sticks with
mm,
us after we leave, good training, I mean, some of us have to leave home and then forcefully reprogram ourselves, but
mm,
um I was fortunate in that I was able to take the good things. My parents gave me good things and I was able to take that with me. And
mm,
it's the things that they taught me to choose, not the things that they forced on me with no participation from me whatsoever.
yeah.
That's the things that stick with me now.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and that's all credit to your parents for sure. I
Mhm.
think that
Yeah.
it's not just a lesson for kids; it's a lesson for all of us, knowing um, when to give way and knowing that the
Yeah.
principles are more important than the general specifics of any one day. There's something bigger here than just
Mhm.
these few days, and really, it's not that important in the whole scheme of things.
I agree. The relationships are what will last and things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if your kids just remember you screaming with grandma about the ingredients of the gravy,
Yeah.
the Christmas is effectively ruined. And whereas they could have
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
tolerated that sodium glutamate or whatever and,
Yeah.
you know, passed it through with the help of some ferments the next day and moved on with their life.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Indeed.
Yeah. That being
So
said,
we've got
though,
another. Yeah.
I
Go
was
on.
going to say, when I go places, if people ask me what I want to bring, I do often offer to bring the dessert because that is one of the
Okay.
things that can just be
Yeah.
catastrophically bad,
Yeah.
filled with red dye and corn syrup and things like that. I'll take the GMO turkey over the red dye and the, you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and then I always make sure that I bring a ferment with me, and I'm not talking about wine here, so that when I'm eating my meat or whatever, I can have the ferment with it.
Mm.
And everybody else always wants to participate, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking of
Yeah.
something that I heard on a Ben Greenfield podcast that struck me
Hmm.
sometime earlier in the year, where he said, I'd much rather eat a ton of white sugar than eat vegetable oils because it's going to
Yeah,
it's going to
I
hit
agree.
me, that sugar, but my body can
Yeah.
do something with it.
Yes,
Whereas
I
that
agree.
vegetable oil is going to go in my cells, and my cells are going to kind of be built from it, and
Yeah.
I can't detox that in the same way. And yeah, the desserts, it's not just sugar they have in. They have in goodness knows
No.
what from the store, all the additives. But at the same time, if you don't have particular sensitivities to sugar, I feel like homemade desserts feel
Mhm.
like to me less kind of toxic than things that are cooked in vegetable oils.
Yeah,
But
I would agree
yeah,
with you.
it's a learning curve. Depends on how you react to them yourself. Because I'm not good with sugar at all, so I'd probably just avoid both. But I don't feel so bad,
Yeah.
Gabriel, having a little bit of sugar every now and again because I think he runs around like crazy and he can cope with it because he doesn't have it at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like Ben was alluding to. There's things that our bodies are already made to be able to process, and synthetic things are really hard on us. And the
Yeah.
toxic and oxidized seed oils are really tough for your body to deal with, and they linger in us for years and years.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about
Yep.
overindulgence, because we had a specific question on that, and
What?
it's tied to Christmas very strongly. Kelsey, one of our patrons, asked, "Do you personally indulge slightly from time to time, and how do you determine when not to?" And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Andrea, before I
Are
potentially
you?
say anything. Yeah, I am. I
Gluttony is a sin.
am.
Oh, 'tis the season for gluttony. Well, interestingly, Allison, Advent is actually supposed to be a season of like abstinence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we celebrate on Christmas. So
Yeah.
it's so funny that for us now, December is kind of evolved into one long perpetual feast.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying, um, when people say, "Oh, I want to be traditional," but then I'll say, "Well, just basically more or less fast for all of December and then eat on
Mm,
Christmas if you want
mm.
to be traditional." The medievals trying to survive were just like, "How not to die over Christmas," literally.
Yeah.
But for me, I find that usually indulging turns out to have not been worth it, and
Mm,
over repeated times of being, "Oh, I'll just do this once," and then feeling horrible afterwards. Over time, that regret and the consciousness of how it makes me feel starts to build
yeah.
and prevents me from even wanting the thing that I used to indulge in. Um, and I know we've talked before about like, where is your line? What line do you not cross? And I would say
Mm,
that my line just keeps moving farther and farther back into
yeah.
the, nourishing traditions slash ancestral. Like there's things that I'll say, well, this is fine, just this once. But over time, I find myself less able to say that about certain things. And I
Mm,
think I still have flexibility. Um, I don't know, but I say that as I live in a bubble, right? And then I leave the bubble and I'm like,
yes.
I can never, but I feel in my head, oh, I'm so flexible. And then I go somewhere and somebody's like, would you like Doritos and
Yeah.
Oreos? And I'm like, what? You know?
They still
So
exist. Oh my gosh.
I know. Every once in a while, I'm like, they still make those things and cigarettes too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I live in a bubble now. So, and a lot of people live in this bubble. So um,
Yeah.
it's not like I intentionally go out and say which friends of mine like ancestral food, but those of us that are drawn to similar things end up in similar circles and
Yep.
end up spending time together and end up liking the same things. And so, when I get together with my moms and they've got, one of them brings sourdough, another one's bringing water kefir and sauerkraut, and someone else is bringing, fermented chutney. And so it doesn't feel like I have to struggle.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so,
nice. That's really nice.
yeah.
In a way, we've achieved something similar by moving countries. And,
Yeah.
we're Rob and I are both introverts, and we like our time at home resting with Gabriel together. And so
Mhm.
that's our bubble. We
Yeah.
do go out, and like you said, you attract people towards you who have similar ideals and ideas. So I haven't really been around kind of normal Christmas food for a few years now. I do think, though, similar to you, it's been a journey of slowly learning for me that getting feedback of, oh, I just ate a bit too much of that and I feel really rubbish and I'm not going to do that again. And it's taken a long time for me to learn that. But really,
Yeah.
I
Me
feel
too.
like I get to the point where I look at foods that are kind of in the normal world, and they just don't seem like food to me. They seem like some sort of Franken food, like you've used that word
No.
before.
Yeah.
And so when I
Yeah.
see them on a table, I don't eat that. It's not food, you know. And I
Yeah.
still got
They
the
don't
opportunity,
provide the
obviously, to
satisfaction you
over
want.
exactly. And I just I I've got to the point now where I just I'm not interested in them. But that's through years and years and years of kind of doing the work and eating this way. And I love my food. I love being involved in my food. I love savouring my food here. And it's a joy. And there's no way I'd want to go back to that. I also,
Yeah.
there's still the opportunity for me to obviously overindulge in the food that I've made here, which is really nice. But again, I feel the same thing. And it surprised me that the last few years I've watched myself with delicious food in front of me that tastes amazing, that in the past I just would have got another spoonful and I would have carried on until I felt ill, or
Yeah.
just a little bit ill, known that I've given my digestion too much to do. But the last few years, something about doing this for this long and the food and maybe the nutrients that are in my system now that weren't before, I just kind of stop. I just think, well, I'm satisfied now, and that will go in the fridge and it will taste even better when the flavours have mulched together tomorrow, and I can eat it
Mulch
tomorrow.
together.
Yeah. And so I don't really do
Oh,
it
I love
much
it.
anymore. I think there's
Yeah.
you know, everyone's on a different stage of their journey, and for many years I've been on very different stages of that journey. But to have faith that it does get easier the more you do it, and the more you notice the
Yeah.
consequences of what you're doing as well. But
Mhm.
yeah, all of the other things
It's
about being
more,
involved and valuing and that kind of thing come in too. Yeah. What were you going to
yes.
say, Andrea?
And Christmas being the fruition of all that, ordo amoris, like ordering
Mm,
your loves, shaping your loves. Like to you, you've ordered your loves such that, rather than being addicted to the stress of rushing place to place, you understand that your first primary love is going to be, spending the time at home,
yeah.
resting with Gabe and Rob, and spending time together.
Yeah.
And so it's not a fight for you to resist the other thing because your loves are in order for you.
Yeah.
And it's not the same for each person,
Yeah.
but knowing that you have them in order makes them rise to the top so much more
Yeah.
effortlessly.
Completely.
And with the food, instead of struggling and fighting against our will, we are shaping our loves and our biome
Mm,
over time so that we desire, we crave, or we're repelled by the things that don't serve
yeah.
us anymore. And that's just life,
Yeah.
all of it.
You said it beautifully. So maybe we can finish on the other question from Kelsey, which was, is
Okay.
it worth it? And how much has your opinion on that changed over the years? And, you know,
Mm.
really feeding on from what you said, Andrea, which was beautiful. That's how I feel. And yes, gosh, it's worth it. It's worth it in the time that I'm spending with
Mhm.
the two people that I love the most in the world, and the wonderful food I'm creating, and the time we have to eat it and share it together, and the deliberateness we've made in what's around us, and the way that we're giving to each other over the season and sharing.
Mhm.
And I didn't always feel like that at all when I was at
Mm-mm.
home with my parents. Christmas was very, very different. And as I grew up, I had a husband before Rob. Christmas was very different, and it
Mm.
was it was based on completely different values. And very often it didn't seem worth it. It just seemed like a
Mm.
big faff and a time that I had to recover from afterwards. Whereas now it feeds into our family's life, and it's a chance for creative expression and spiritual kind of practice and joy.
Mhm.
And so yeah, taking all these steps to move away from the mainstream with food and with all of the other things makes it worth it, because I value it so much more.
Yeah.
What?
And I would second that, Allison. Is it worth it? Kelsey asked. And in the spirit of Christmas and giving and all of that, I would say yes, it is, because it's not just about you. At a certain point, you're
Mm,
taking people with you. You took not just you and Rob and Gabe, but everybody that you're touching through the podcast is coming with you. And
mm,
then people start to tell you things. People in your life will say, "Oh, guess what? I got a turkey from a farm by us," because they
mm,
know you'll be excited to hear about that.
mm,
Or they'll say, "Hey, guess what? The Brussels sprouts I got, they're organic. And you get to celebrate those things with them.
Mm.
And you get to know that you, by ordering your loves and finding out what is worth it to you, are helping with that effort of changing the world a plate at a time.
Yeah, completely. You gave me goosebumps when you were talking then. Thank you.
Mm,
Okay. Well,
you did it.
before we finish up, I'd like to wish everyone who's listened to us this year a very happy Christmas and peaceful and a joyful Christmas. And
Mm,
if you've enjoyed our episode, do leave us a review on Apple if you're listening on Apple, or share the podcast with someone. If there's someone you think needs some help to get through the Christmas period,
yes.
pass this on to them. Andrea, do you
Stuff
want?
our stocking with reviews.
Yeah.
That's what we want for Christmas. We
Exactly.
love that. Make them good ones though.
Yeah, nice ones, exactly.
If you have a
Wonderful.
bad review, just send it to us personally. We'll fix it.
There are instructions in the show notes on how to review on Apple if you've not done it before. And yeah,
Yeah.
we would love to see those in our stockings.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys. And this is the
Thank you.
greatest gift. Thank you. Well, thank you, Allison. This was so pleasant and lovely,
Yeah, happy
as
Christmas.
always. Happy Christmas to you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation. Come find us on Instagram. Andrea's at Farm and Hearth and Alison's at Ancestral_kitchen. Until next time, we both wish you much fun, exploration, and satisfaction in and out of the kitchen.